Are you planning a trip to Egypt soon? Then stay tuned because I'm about to give you some insider tips on things that you should know before traveling to Egypt. Number one, Egypt is absolutely beautiful. There's way more to the country than just Cairo and the pyramids of Giza. If you want to get the full experience, I recommend you going to other cities like Alexandria, Luxor, or Aswan. One of the best ways to do this is to fly from Cairo to Aswan and then hop on a Nile River cruise where you can stop in Luxor on the way there. Number two, their official currency is the Egyptian pound, and this is the conversion rate. I do recommend that you bring some cash with you because you won't always be able to use your credit card while you're in Egypt. And although you can pay for some things with dollar bills, there is a chance that you might get scammed out of your money because they will charge you more in dollars than it would have cost you to pay in Egyptian pound. If you don't have the chance to exchange your money at home, don't worry because you can go ahead and exchange your dollars to the Egyptian pounds at the airport in Cairo. There's a bank stand right next to the baggage claim when you arrive in Cairo, and that's where I exchanged my money when I got there because I waited till the last minute to do it. Big shock. Also, make sure that if you are bringing your own bills, whether it be dollars or Egyptian pounds, before getting to Egypt, that these bills are crisp and new and that they have no rips or wrinkles on them. For some reason, the Egyptians do not like raggedy or ripped bills, and a lot of the times they won't accept it if it's not nice and crisp. So make sure that when you're exchanging your money, that these bills that you're getting, both dollars and Egyptian pound, are very clean and there are no rips on it at all. Number three, you should not drink the tap water in Egypt to avoid getting sick because most likely your body is just not used to the foreign bacteria. And I just want to be clear that this does not mean that the water in Egypt is dirty at all. In fact, while we were in the Nile, our tour director grabbed the water bottle and filled it up with the water in the river so we could see how clean it is. It's simply just because our guts are not used to the foreign bacteria in this country, and that would be the case in any other place that you go to. So make sure that you are drinking lots and lots of bottled water. Since we were there with EF, they were constantly giving us water bottles throughout our trip. I felt super important actually. Every time we step onto the bus, they'd have a water bottle to give us, and our tour director was actually super awesome in making sure that we were drinking water all the time. Which leads us to our next tip while we are on the topic of water. Tip number 4 is to drink some. All the time. If you don't drink enough water, there is a very high chance that you could get dehydrated because it is very hot and it is very dry in Egypt. Especially if you're further south in Aswan or in the Valley of the Kings in Luxor, you'll be in the middle of the desert and it can get pretty hot in there. So make sure that you are staying hydrated 100% of the time. The sun will be extremely hot while you're there, which leads us to the 5th thing that you should know before traveling to Egypt. You're gonna need lots of sunscreen, especially if you're as pale as me. Our trip was in the middle of March, but it was still pretty hot. The weather around that time sort of fluctuates. It gets really hot around noontime and then starts to cool down later at night when the sun goes down. While we were there, the temperature was around mid 80s throughout the day, and then it cooled off at night and dropped to maybe high 60s. So you should also bring a hat or a scarf to cover your head and your shoulders throughout the day, especially if you're going to be out in the sun all day. And then for later in the night, make sure to bring a light jacket because especially if you're in Cairo, it might get a little bit cooler at night and you will be a little chilly if you don't have a jacket. Number 6, you do need a visa to get into Egypt if you're coming from the United States. There are 2 ways to do this. You can either get an e-visa online before you go, or you can wait to get it at the airport. Our tour director recommended that we get ours at the airport. Since we were traveling with EF, they sort of just took care of that for us. As soon as we arrived at the airport in Cairo, they already had bought our visas for us, which is $25. So as soon as we got there, they handed us our little visa, which is a tiny little sticker about the size that you put on your passport. You go through immigration with it. They ask you what you're doing in Egypt. You tell them that you're there for tourism, and they pretty much send you on your way. Number 7, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you feel about crocs, but there are no Nile crocodiles on the Egyptian side of the Aswan High Dam. So if you do ever end up getting on a boat during your travels to Egypt, which I'm gonna bet very highly that you will at some point, don't be worrying about the crocodiles because they are none. Yeah, there were some people that were disappointed about this one on our trip. I was not one of them. Number 8, this is a pretty important one if you're a woman. Even though Egypt is a Muslim country, and one of the biggest things that I feel like girls worry about before traveling there is attire, what they're gonna wear, if they have to cover their heads or any other parts of their body. And I'm just gonna go ahead and throw it in there that it was way more lenient than I thought it was gonna be. So if you are a woman, don't worry about it too much. You can wear regular clothes. Just make sure that your shoulders and your knees are covered if you are going into a religious building. I never had to cover my head or anything, even when we visited a couple mosques in Cairo. And the day that we visited the Karnak temple in Luxor, it was like super hot, and I was wearing like a spaghetti strap, like maxi dress, and like nobody said anything to me, and it was totally fine. If you are worried about this at any point during your trip, that's why I also recommend that you bring a scarf, because not only does it serve as a way to like protect yourself from the sun, but also to cover up any part of your body if you feel worried about it at any point during your travels, or you feel like you need to cover up at any point throughout your trip. Number 9, like in many other parts of the world, haggling is a thing in Egypt. If you've ever been to Mexico, it's a very similar situation where the vendors are very like straightforward, and they're like on top of you, trying to get you to come to their shop, trying to get you to look at their items. So if this is your first time ever traveling to a country where this is the custom, don't be startled. It is a part of their culture, and you will eventually get used to it. This happens a lot in the most touristy areas, especially with vendors that are selling souvenirs, because they know that you're a tourist and they're gonna try to get you to come and take a look at their stuff. But if you're not interested, just make sure to say no thank you and be firm about it, and just keep on walking. And number 10, the traffic. I thought that LA traffic was bad, but Cairo like takes the lead on this one. It's incredibly unpredictable and can last for hours. So if you are in Cairo during your travels to Egypt, make sure to account for delays in transportation. I found that getting around in Egypt was a bit like overwhelming. Thank God that we were there with a travel company, and EF pretty much handles like all intercity transportation for all their trips. So we didn't necessarily have to kind of like figure out how to get from one place to the other on our own while we're there. We had like our own bus and our own driver, but we got stuck in traffic so many times, and it was so bad. I honestly don't know how I personally would have reacted if I had to handle my own transportation in Cairo, because it was just like chaos all the time. Like, I don't even know how to explain this, but they don't even follow the traffic lanes. Like, they don't drive in the lanes. They have the lines on the road, but they just don't follow them. Everyone just kind of goes like in their own path, and it was crazy. So definitely don't try to drive in Egypt. I'm not too familiar with their public transportation, because like I said, we had our own bus that was taking us from one area to the other. And like with the traffic and the chaos, I highly recommend that if you are going on a tour or taking an excursion, that you book one that already has transportation included in it, so that somebody else who already knows the area and has experience driving around in the city can take you from your hotel to wherever you need to be. I hope that these tips help you better prepare for your next trip to Egypt. And if you found this information useful, make sure to subscribe to this channel for future travel tips. And if you want to find out more about the travel company that I went to Egypt with, make sure to watch this next video where I go over who EF Ultimate Break is in detail. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, and I can't wait to see you on the next one.